Hello, I am Željko Stanojević, a host with the New Books Network, president of the Institute of Hebrew Language and Literature in Belgrade, Serbia, and editor-in-chief of the European Hebrew Journal. Today, my guest is Professor Amihai Mazar of the Hebrew University of Jerusalem, one of the leading archaeologists of ancient Israel and a member of the editorial board of the European Hebrew Journal. We will discuss volume 5 and, of course, all the volumes of Tel Rehov, a Bronze and Iron Age city in the Beth-Shean Valley, which focuses on various objects and natural science studies from the excavations. Professor Mazar, could you first introduce yourself and tell us about your main research interests?
Okay, I was born many years ago, in fact, 1942, here in Israel, in Haifa. And I graduated the Hebrew University, first degree, second degree, third degree in 1997. And I have been conducting archaeological activity in Israel, in fact, since I was a student and even before that, but as an independent scholar since 1968, my first projects. And I continued many years until I retired about 15 years ago. But even then, I continue working, publishing my excavations. And finally, just last week, we had the last volume that I published, a final report on Tel Kasila excavations. I excavated major 4 sites and several minor sites in the land of Israel. Tel Kasila, it's a small site in North Tel Aviv, but very important one for the study of the Philistine culture and interconnections in the Iron Age 1 and in the 10th and 9th centuries BC. I then moved to Tel Batash, Timna, biblical Timna, in the Sorek Valley west of Bet Shemesh, where I excavated for 12 years, a very interesting site to study the interrelations between Philistines and Israelites in the Bronze Age and Iron Age. And then I moved north to the Beth-Shean Valley, where I excavated for more than 20 years, 9 years at Tel Beth-Shean, the major mound in the Beth-Shean Valley, very prominent one. And then from 1997, I moved to another important site, a very large site, almost unknown before, Tel Rehov, about 5 kilometers south of Beth-Shean, in the Beth-Shean Valley, both in the Jordan Valley, where I excavated for 12 seasons until 2012. This was my final field season. I also excavated smaller sites, about 5 smaller sites, mainly in the hill country near Jerusalem, Gilo, the Bull site in North Samaria, and several other sites. Yeah. And of course, I taught for many years in Hebrew University. I was head of the Institute of Archaeology for 5 years. I had several PhD students, and I wrote several hundred articles, papers of various sorts on many subjects. In 1989, I published a general book on the archaeology of Israel. 1990, in fact, it appeared. It was called The Archaeology of the Land of the Bible, which was used for many years in colleges, seminaries, and so on. So far, so good. And I, of course, married and a grandfather for 6 children.
Very, very
Yeah.
nice. Thank you. Okay, let's talk about Tel Rehov. You have published 5 tomes of the book. What you can tell us about all the project, about all 5 books about Tel Rehov?
Yeah. These 5 books appeared in 1 year, in 2020, as they are called Rehov 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And they appeared in a monograph series of the Hebrew University called Qedem, which is also available on JSTOR because it is recognized as a journal. And this is a series dedicated mainly for final reports of excavations. As you might know, final reports in archaeology are crucial for the regular continuation of study. They enable evaluation and study of what was really discovered in these excavations. And therefore, I try my best to publish my excavations in such final reports. I already published 15 of them. The final one appears just 2 weeks ago, 1 week or 2 weeks ago on Tel Kasila. So these 5 volumes on Tel Rehov are a culmination of results of 12 years of excavations in the field. So you can get a proportion about the investment in field work and publication. In many cases in archaeology worldwide, we know that final reports take many years, and sometimes, in many cases, archaeologists don't even publish them at all. It's the next generation, the young generation, that publish the excavations of their teachers or relatives or whatever. In my case, I tried my best to publish as soon as possible, but even that took 8 years from the end of the last season, 2012, until the publication in 2020. So what we try to do in these publications is to document the excavation as much as possible. As you can realize, archaeology is a destructive science. Once you excavate anything, you cannot repeat this excavation. You destroy the area that you excavate. And therefore, it's crucial to document your excavation in a very proper way so that future archaeologists will be able to really study and understand what was done in the field, what was discovered in the field in the most objective way. So what we try to do is to describe our excavations in the most objective way as much as possible. That means the first volume, in fact, the first 3 volumes of the 5 are dedicated to very detailed description of each excavation area. We just describe each excavation area from the bottom to the top, from the earliest levels that were excavated to the top ones. In our country, in the Middle East in general, the Bronze and Iron Age sites are usually found in mounds. The mounds include many levels. You know, the first mound that was excavated by Petrie, Tel Reḥov, was published in a book called A Mound of Many Cities. And this title reflects, you know, the fact that those mounds contain layers after layers after layers of human occupation. At Tel Reḥov, we defined about almost 20 such layers, and their definition is not a simple task. And in the field already, when we excavate, it's very difficult. We try to document our excavations in a very precise way, and the publication has to reflect this process. So the first 3 volumes include introduction, of course. We have introduction concerning the region, the geology, the environmental features, and so on, the history of the site, the identification of the site, the history of the exploration, and presenting our excavations, our expedition. And then it starts area by area. We describe the stratigraphy, as we call it. That means the sequence of strata in each level. In each stratum, we describe each building or part of the excavation. It's a very technical description because we have a lot of numbers of walls and loci and so on. We have tables of loci, we have section drawings, we have many photographs, we have plans, of course, which provides the reader the best documentation that we can provide of our field work. Unfortunately, when we excavated, drones were not yet in use, so we don't have drone photographs, which are now very common in archaeology. But we have a lot of photographs, of course, and all this documentation takes a lot of pages. You want 3 volumes, just descriptions of the stratigraphy. And also we have in these volumes, after describing each of the excavation area, we provided a chapter which includes pottery plates. I mean, all the pottery, which is so important for study the interconnection, the chronology, and so on, is presented by strata, and in each stratum by context. That means building after building or unit after unit. The pottery that came from it is drawn and presented just after the stratigraphic chapter. So this takes 3 volumes. In volume 2, we also have a long chapter on one of our unique, unusual discovery, and that is the discovery of the apiary, the beehives that we found at Tel Rehov, which are in fact the only beehives ever found, the only apiary ever found in the ancient Near East, and in my view, even in the ancient world. There is no evidence for a complete apiary with beehives, complete beehives, even with the bees themselves that we found charred in the honeycombs, and they were identified in studies. So in the second volume, we have a large chapter dedicated to this particular discovery. Then comes 2 more volumes, which are dedicated to the finds and to the various studies that we conducted. So in volume 4, we discuss the pottery from each period, in-depth comparative discussion of the pottery based on the pottery plates that were published in the first 3 volumes. Now we have a typology of this pottery, a seriation, quantitative studies, and a comparative discussion, not written by me. I wrote part of it, but large parts were written by other scholars, mainly by Nava Panitz-Cohen. She was my assistant, and she collaborated and really was very important in this publication. So we have discussions of the pottery, imported pottery, for example, Greek pottery, Cypriot pottery, Mycenaean pottery, etc. And then we have special chapters dedicated to the various finds. Various finds includes, for example, clay figurines. We have a very large collection, over, I think, 40, more than that, clay figurines. We have faience amulets. We have a large collection of seals, stone seals, glyptic, metal objects, stone objects, all kinds of objects related to textile industry, like loom weights and spindles, inscriptions. Tel Rehov yielded one of the most important groups of inscriptions from the 10th and 9th centuries BC, a very important group. So we have a special chapter dedicated to these inscriptions with interpretation, parallels, etc. So this part takes most of volume 4 and parts of volume 5. Most of these chapters were written by specialists. Specialists for seals, for example, Otmar Kehl for Switzerland, or metal objects, Naama Yahalom Mak from the Hebrew University, and so on. Analysis, scientific analysis of the metal objects, and all kinds of other studies in the natural sciences, which are now part and parcel of the archaeological investigation. They are in volume 5. For example, analysis of the animal bones, of botanical material, paleomagnetic study, radiocarbon studies, we emphasized in this
Sorry,
yeah.
I just have a question about if it's okay for you about volume 5. Major part of volume 5 is devoted to scientific studies, including, like you say, animal remains, plants, radiocarbon dating, and other environmental evidence. What new picture of life at Tel Rehov do those studies give us?
Well, the natural sciences studies in archaeology became essential in archaeological research, and they really provide a new dimension to understand life of these ancient societies. For example, the animal bones studies showed that in a certain quarter of Tel Rehov, and this is a very important quarter because there we found in the 9th century buildings a lot of cult objects and evidence for ceremonies. Also, 3 inscriptions were found in this part of the mound, including the name of the prophet Elisha. And the study of the animal bones showed that in this particular area, they consumed only the best parts of sheep and goat. That means it's a kind of elite area based on this analysis. Okay? So this was an important aspect of these studies. We, for example, want to know to what extent those people during the time of the Kingdom of Israel, the Northern Kingdom of Israel, consumed pork. Because, the Bible, of course, prohibited pork consumption. To what extent
And what you
archaeology
find?
confirmed it? In Tel Rehov, we found that occasionally they used just hunted boars. They didn't raise pigs, but from time to time they hunted a boar and ate it. They didn't have any problem with that. For example, we have a study of the fish bones by Professor Omri Lernau, and he showed that we have many fish bones of Nile perch, a large fish about 1 meter long that was imported from Egypt or from northern Sinai, probably as dried fish that was brought to the port cities like Dor or Akko, and from there imported to inland into the Jordan Valley. So this is an interesting aspect of ancient trade relations. We couldn't learn all this without this work of scientists who cooperated with us. Radiocarbon dates, we have from Tel Rehov, we measured about 160 dates. It's one of the largest number of radiocarbon dates from a single site in Israel, and it provided us a very precise chronology of our strata. So we can say when each one of these stratum existed. And this is also, of course, of major importance for the study of the Iron Age in this country.
I understand. Thank you. Um, Archaeology and I think archaeology and this is something between humanistic studies and sport. Maybe because of this you look so young. Maybe this is a receipt. Maybe many people need to be archaeologists. Uh,
Maybe.
okay.
So I must say that some of my colleagues died in a young age.
Oh yeah.
It's yeah, even my teacher,
I'm so
Igal
sorry.
Yadin. Yeah.
I'm so sorry. Uh, One especially interesting study examines titled walls and possible earthquake damage using paleomagnetic evidence. What did this research show, and why is it important?
You refer to a study by Erez Ben Yosef. Today he's a professor in Tel Aviv University. He did this work when he was still a student. And paleomagnetism was introduced to is being introduced to archaeology of this country during the last years. It became quite interesting research subject. And today about 3 or 4 researchers in Israel deal with it. And there is a very nice laboratory in the Hebrew University for paleomagnetism. I'm not a specialist and I cannot even judge this field of research, but due to changes in the magnetic direction and of the globe, they can measure and learn a lot about seismic activities and changes during time in the magnetism in each part. And it turns out that in the Iron Age, the changes were quite severe and happened often. So in the Iron Age in particular, the magnetic changes are an important tool for chronological and other studies. In this particular study, Erez Ben Yosef used paleomagnetism to understand changes in burnt bricks when clay is burnt, you can measure the magnetic amount in its particular time, in this particular time. And since those bricks were found in walls that were tilted, he could conclude that perhaps they were destroyed by an earthquake, which he dates to the beginning of the 9th century BCE. So this is quite interesting. Though this study is a little bit problematic from some aspects, but still it is an interesting contribution. It's one of the early contributions in the field of paleomagnetism. Today we have many more. Yeah.
Do you have something surprised you in your research of in Tel Rehov? Something very surprised you, maybe?
Well, I think the most surprising, there were 2 surprises in Tel Rehov, or maybe 3. One was the very size of the site. It occurs to us that this is one of the largest Iron Age sites in the land of Israel. And it must have been, for example, it's about twice as much as Beth-Shean. So it must have been a major city in the Iron Age during the time of the monarchy, also during the Canaanite period before. The second surprise was these beehives, the apiary that I mentioned, which was really a total surprise. We didn't expect to find such a discovery. And this discovery combines various aspects. First of all, the discovery itself, to see an apiary, 30 beehives arranged nicely, regularly in the middle of the city, inside the city. There is no parallel to this anywhere else. But in addition to that, we found evidence first for cultic activities related to the apiary. That means there was an altar and an incense burner. There was some ceremonies, cultic ceremonies related to the apiary. We also found a jar with a name incised on it in the apiary, and this name is extremely interesting. It says Le Nimshi, belonging to Nimshi. Nimshi is the biblical name of the father or grandfather of Jehu, the king who founded the new dynasty, the Nimshite dynasty, that ruled Israel for about 100 years. And this is extremely important because the same name appears also in a second inscription from Tel Rehov in a higher level, and also in a nearby site. So we have it in 3 different occasions in this region.
Sorry,
And for
Professor.
me,
Sorry.
yes,
This is the name is just Yehu.
no, the name that we found is Nimshi, Nun
Nimshi.
Mem
Okay.
Shin. Now, Nun Mem Shin
Okay.
is in the Bible, in the book of Kings, appears as the name of once the father and twice as grandfather of Jehu, of Yehu.
Okay.
So from this, I conclude that since the name appears 3 times in Tel Rehov in 2 different strata, I conclude that perhaps the Nimshi clan was the most important clan, or a very important clan in this city, a family. Perhaps they were the owners of this apiary, of those beehives. The third important point is that we managed to analyze the bees. And according to the scholars who analyzed them, there was a German one, a Brazilian one, an Israeli one, they analyzed and concluded that they are bees of a very special subspecies called Apis mellifera anatoliaca. That means the Anatolian honeybee, which is not local. It's not the Syrian honeybee, which is local to Israel. So that means that they brought bees from Anatolia. The whole thing is very, very interesting, unusual. And we ask ourselves, why? Why did they build this industrial apiary in the middle of the city, inside the city? So I have my own ideas. I thought that it is related to maybe not so much to honey as to bee wax. Bee wax was very important in ancient times for all kind of purposes, and especially for metal casting. And we know that in the 10th and 9th centuries, the trade in metal, especially in copper, that originated in the Araba Valley in Feinan mines was extremely important. I suggested that this is reflected in the Book of Kings when the Book of Kings describe Solomon casting the copper vessels for the temple in the Jordan Valley between Sukkot and Tzaretan. That means this is maybe a recollection, a memory, a biblical memory of the fact that copper industry was so important in the Jordan Valley during this time. So I suggested that maybe the bee wax was used for metal industry in this region. By the way, the metal analysis from Tel Rehov, conducted by Naama Yahalom has shown that all the copper objects that we found at Tel Rehov the copper originated from the Araba, from these Araba mines. So this was a second surprise. The third surprise was this particular quarter in what we call Area C, where we found several houses, unique in plan. 2 of them, two of them at least, contained cult objects, all kind of cult objects, altars, pottery altars, cult stands, incense burners, and huge quantity of pottery and various other objects, including 3 inscriptions. One of these inscriptions mentions again the Nimshi family, and another inscription mentions the name Elisha, at least so we read it, Elisha. And Elisha surprised us very much because we are here, this level is dated to the second half of the 9th century BC. This is precisely the time of the prophet Elisha, who was in the Bible appears right in the time of the end of the Omride dynasty and the rise of the Nimshite dynasty, the rise of King Yehu. And also we know that Elisha came from a place called Abel Mechola, which is identified with a mound that is located about 10 kilometers from Tel Rehov. So we are in the same region. So the whole quarter, this quarter with its finds, was a total surprise, and it's a very special discovery.
Thank you, Professor. Professor Mazar, you are one of famous archaeologists in the world, I want to say, from Hebrew
Well, please.
University. From Hebrew University of Jerusalem. I want to ask you one question about Bible, because our listeners and viewers, like archaeologists, um, did you find some? I know that you find by you speaking, but did you find something that maybe prove about biblical truth? Do you find something that proved the Bible? Of course, parts of Bible.
Well,
No,
this is
all.
a very large, very wide,
Yeah, I know.
very large subject. You know, we could talk for 2 hours just on this subject. Um, to cut things short, it depends on which period you're talking about. If you are talking about the 8th and 7th centuries BC, we have plenty of evidence that the biblical record can be confirmed archaeologically from many aspects. For example, if we are talking about the greatness of Jerusalem in the 8th century and 7th centuries, we have so huge amount of discoveries relating to this subject. If you are talking about the invasion of Judah by Sennacherib, we have very clear evidence for this in excavations at Lachish, many other sites. Even in my excavations at Timna, Tel Batash, we found evidence for the conquest of the place by Sennacherib at 701 BC. He mentions this place in his annals. The destruction of Jerusalem by the Babylonians, of Judah by the Babylonians, and of the kingdom of Israel by the Assyrians is very well recorded in the archaeological evidence. And even names of kings like Hezekiah was found in seal impression with his name in Jerusalem, several seal impressions. So we can say a lot about archaeology and biblical data in the 8th and 7th centuries BC. It becomes more complicated when we go earlier to the 9th century, particularly to the 10th century, and even more so when we are going to earlier period, the Iron Age 1, the time of the judges, or the Israelite conquest of the country by Joshua, or the Exodus, or the patriarchs. The more we go deep into time, the more vague things become. And archaeology, for example, did not confirm the conquest of Israel by Joshua, certainly. We have negative evidence from many sites, and it's now clear that there was no total conquest in a short time led by one general as described in the book of Joshua. On the other side, when we turn to the book of Judges and we read about the Philistines, for example, we have a lot of data concerning the Philistines from archaeology. And this data confirms much of what is told to us in the Bible. For example, the Bible tells us that there were 5 major cities of the Philistines: Gaza, Ashkelon, Ashdod, Ekron, and Gat. 4 of them were excavated. In all 4 of them, we have clear evidence for large Philistine cities in the 12th and 11th centuries BC. And the Philistine culture also shows a lot of connections with the Aegean world, which recollect biblical references to the origin of the Philistines in the Aegean world, Crete or whatever. So we can continue with this for hours. The major subject that is now under debate is the time of David and Solomon. Whether David and Solomon kingdom should be accepted as they are described in the Bible, or whether we should dismantle them historically, and that they didn't exist as important kingdoms or even small empire as they are described in the Bible. This issue is under severe discussion and debate since the 1990s. And again, I have my own views, my colleagues have other views, and this makes life interesting. Otherwise, we should be bored, we have to debate something. So this time of the 10th century is still under debate. When we go to the 9th, when we reach the 9th century, things become again more stable because we have Assyrian documents. We have Assyrian documents that mention, for example, Ahab. So we know that Ahab was an historical figure. And we also have a lot of archaeological evidence from the 9th century, including Tel Rehov, but also Megiddo, Hatzor, Samaria, and other sites which confirm the importance of the kingdom of Israel in that time, in the 9th century BC. We still have many questions regarding Judah in the 9th century, and again, this is a debated subject.
Okay, thank you. Professor Mazar, you are also a member of the editorial board of the European Hebrew Journal. What your thoughts about the journal and its contribution to biblical, archaeological, Hebrew, and Jewish studies?
Well, this is a new journal, as far as I understand, and I hope that it will be important and that it will get important contributions, not only in biblical and Hebrew language and so on, but also in archaeology, historical geography, and so on. I will try to help in this as much as I can.
Yes, thank you. I also hope because in end of August in 2026 we will publish the second number of the journal. Is there anything important in your work on and in books about Tel Rehov that I not asked you? And what are your main research plans for the future?
Well, I think concerning Tel Rehov, we spoke about most of the subjects. Of course, the readers are invited to read. There are only 5 books, altogether about 3,600 pages, so it's very boring. But there are interesting subjects there. I now try to write a book. In fact, I almost finished writing a book, which will be a synthesis of all the work at Tel Rehov and Beth-Shean together. Beth-Shean was published in 4 volumes between 2009 and 2012. So altogether, there are 9 volumes, which is really too much for one person to read. So I try to comprehend and to write a synthesis of all these 5 chapters of these 9 volumes in a 100 or 200 pages book that will be published, I hope, by SBL, Society of Biblical Literature. I'm about to finish this, so this will be a synthesis and available for readers who don't want to delve into the technical aspects of the final reports. I also published during the last month a new volume of Tel Kasila excavations, which I wrote during the last 5 years since I published Tel Rehov. This was in 2020. We are now in 2026. So I accomplished another volume, a 3rd volume of final report on excavations at Tel Kasila. Tel Kasila is my favorite site because it was the first site that I excavated, and it was first excavated by my uncle Benjamin Mazar back in 1948. He never published the final report, so I worked on this material, and this volume includes a final report on his excavations and also some of my excavations that were not so far published. So this volume, 600 pages, appeared recently, and I'm very happy about that. So, in my age, I think it's enough, I'm not
Yes,
so young, so
but like I said, archaeology is like sport, so we will see many good works from you. Okay, European Hebrew Journal organized international scholarly online Zoom conference from 6 to 8 November 2026, named New Discoveries and New Directions in Biblical, Hebrew and Theological Studies, an international online conference supporting the Diamond Open Access mission of the European Hebrew Journal. And I want to invite our listeners and viewers to register to this very big conference. Professor Mazar, thank you very much for joining me and for helping us understand how small finds and scientific evidence can transform our picture of an ancient city. It has been a great pleasure to discuss 5 volumes, specifically volume 5 of the Tel Reḥov with you. Thank you to everyone for listening and watching us, and I hope you will join us again for another conversation on the New Book Network and Institute for Hebrew Language and Literature. Thank you, Professor Mazar.
Thank you very much, Professor Stanojević. I hope I pronounce your name correctly. Stanojević.
Yes, my grandfather was Stanoje. What is this Stanoje in Serbian? Is somebody who stuck something.
Okay.
Now I need to stop our interview. Thank you, Professor.
Thank you very much.